I don't need a executive session.
That's fine. Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Sure. But if you need an alternative, it's. Ed, is the Jay's open at on 115?
The one over in the West Ward? Sullivan Trail. Yeah, 1800 Sullivan Trail. Shopping center. Yeah, that one's open. That one opened about a month ago. We opened up to Leslie's just last week.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Good. Definitely a different feel than the old Upper Westlake. That was like the bar hall.
Oh, it was.
And it was an institution where now this is more of a fast casual restaurant. But we're getting good reviews, and we still carry the crab cakes. One of the guys that works for me, he loves crab cakes. So he recreated the recipe. So if you like crab cakes, that's definitely a place to go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the Behind Northampton Airport Authority meeting. Will you please stand? I pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So then, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Ann Baum, John Cramsey, Brian Dames.
Here.
Chuck Diacon.
Here.
Mike Dowd.
Here.
Glenn Geisinger. John Hayes. Larry Hemberger. Neil Copeland. Ed Lozano.
Here.
Jeff Matskin. Ted Rosenberger.
Here.
Mike Schwer.
Here.
Matt Turk. Chris Worley.
Here.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Thank you. So that. Opportunity for public comment. Does anyone care to address the authority? Pardon me?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We then have a couple of introductions to make, and so I'll defer to Charles.
Good morning. I would like to introduce Officer Jake Scoble and his new partner, K-9 partner, Mickey.
Hey, Mickey.
Good afternoon, how are you?
So tell us a little bit about her and about yourself.
Officer Scoble, I've been here for 2 years, otherwise known as Jake. This is the kind of the star right now. Mickey's a 18-month-old Belgian Malinois. We got her from Progressive K-9 Academy up in Waldeport. She was a Dutch import, dual purpose, explosive detection, patrol. We added on tracking just as more of a community relations. As I was saying earlier, there's just seems to be a lot of people going missing, whether it's special needs children or Alzheimer's patients, just being another way to kind of get back to the community. Hey, Fulligan. She's doing extremely well. She's newly certified in explosives. June 7th will be our patrol certification. Everything's looking good. She's a far better dog than I am a handler, that's for sure. She makes me look good. Super social, like I said, she's pleasant, she's happy, great to be around. I think that the authority made a good decision having a K-9 brought on board, and Progressive K-9 made a great selection. They contacted us. She was actually meant for a federal agency. I guess the funding kind of fell out, so they went to 2 other agencies, and the owner of Progressive K-9, Doug Wendling, has a knack of kind of placing the right dog with the right handler at the right agency. Nikki, being what she is, she's super sweet, but she's not for every handler. Called us and said, I think I have the dog for you. We went and met her probably 3 weeks before we picked her up. That was a done deal. That was it. It was love at first sight. She's a good pup, and I'm grateful to be selected to handle her.
Thank you, Officer Coble and Chief Coder. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
The next introduction is William Easterly. He is a passenger services agent. He has been with us for 1 year. He was elected by his peers to be the employee of the quarter. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. Very good. So it's good to begin with a couple pieces of really good news. The minutes of the April 25th meeting were distributed to you electronically as well as present here in paper. Do we have a motion first to accept them?
So moved.
Motion by Chuck. Do we have a second? Jeff, thank you very much. Any additions, corrections, comments? Then all those in favor of adopting the minutes as distributed, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Terrific. Ed, you want to begin with a treasury report for us, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's my good fortune to report another good month and year-to-date results on behalf of the Airport Authority. And so I put together a couple of pages to hopefully simplify the presentation. So this is for the month, and as you can see, our monthly results in terms of net revenues were close to 2.4 million, which is 12% ahead of budget and 36% ahead of last year. So obviously a very strong month from a top-line net revenue standpoint. Expenses were a little bit ahead of budget this month, but still within the range. And you may recall in the last few months, we were significantly below budget. And we had highlighted that sooner or later, timing is going to come into play in terms of when contractor services bills, et cetera, come in. And this was the month where they kind of all hit in one month. So that's why you'll see the 1.6 million number slightly ahead of our budget of 1.5. But nonetheless, when you take that down to the bottom line on net income basis, you'll see that it was an extraordinary month, 65% ahead of budget and 135% ahead of last year. So more than double the net income versus last year. And really, it's another consistent performance, strong cargo traffic. I think we're up to an average of 5.5 flights per month. And that obviously has a all ships rise when that number goes up type of effect in the sense of apron, handling services, et cetera. So all of those were up. On the offsetting side, there was a slight reduction in revenues from parking and roadways, and that was driven by a slight reduction in passenger traffic. So parking and passenger traffic kind of go hand in hand, and it was a fairly nominal amount, and we'll talk about the passenger traffic in a second. But then again, just recapping, the monthly expenses were a little higher. But you'll see later on that year to date, we're still below plan, which means staff is managing expenses very well. So that's the monthly numbers. Any questions?
I don't have a question, Eddie, but thank you for having it put in this format. It makes it so much easier to understand.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, agreed. You're welcome. Thank you. Now, let's turn to the passenger traffic. So the passenger traffic for the month was 56,012, and that was slightly below last year at this point in time. The good news is Allegiant was up over 40% on a monthly basis. The offset was on the legacy carriers, so the Deltas, the Uniteds, and the Americans of the world. It was a slight offset, and we think that is going to hopefully stabilize. But nonetheless, slightly down for the month, and overall, as you can see for the quarter, fairly nominal passenger traffic drop. So we can turn to the next slide. Now, that was offset again by cargo, and the message remains consistent. For the month of April, we had 20 million total in 2017 versus 5.7 million in 2016, so 253% increase for the month. And then on a year-to-date basis, you're talking about 150% increase in volume. So obviously cargo, just a huge business and a monstrous month.
What units is that in? 75 million what?
That's pounds, right? Pounds.
That's done by pound, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry, I should have clarified that, but that's pounds. So this is kind of just your year-to-date results, and just put it in a little bit of a bar chart format that Todd has. And what you can clearly see here is, from a 2017 net revenue standpoint, we're at 9 million versus last year, which was closer to 7 million, and budget of 8. So 7 million last year, 8 million was our plan. Actual results year to date are $9 million. So very strong results from a financial operating standpoint on the top line. We go to expenses. Last year was 4.9 million, budget was 6, and we're now running at about 5.9. So on an overall year-to-date standpoint, we're still under plan, which is good. And then, the net income results are just outstanding, 1.9 million versus 800,000 last year at this point in time. So we've more than doubled net income from a year-to-date standpoint. So very strong results. And then I'm going to pass this over to Todd. It's a little bit of an eye chart, and we'll figure out how to clean this up a little bit. But it's important just to highlight some of the cash flow projections and the changes on a month-by-month basis. So Todd?
Yeah, I just wanted to interject here on the cash flow. What we did is we updated it for the last 12 months, which we always do. But we included the most recent projections for some of our additional expenditures, and those are reflected in here in yellow. You can see those there. So by the end, and these are always conservative numbers, by the end we'll still have enough cash, but we've got a lot of additional capital needs going on in the next 12 months that we've discussed previously. So everything that we know most recently, and it changes every week around here, is reflected in here. So I just wanted to point that out.
And by the way, it's page 18 in your booklet in case you want to look at some of the detail. It's hard to see on the chart. Again, we'll work to clean that up a little bit and highlight some of the key numbers, but if anybody has any questions for Todd, it's page 18.
Any questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
So in summary, good operating financials for the month. Passenger traffic has been slightly down, offset by a strong growth in cargo, which translate to very positive net income based on all the downstream services. Expenses have remained year-to-date below plan, and year-to-date net income has more than doubled as of this trimester. So overall, just again, a great trimester, great month, and open it up to any questions if anybody has any.
I'd just like to echo Jeff's and Chuck's comments. I think this is, to both of you, thank you very much. This is a much easier thing for us to understand, and it puts the numbers really in front of us in a very direct and understandable way. And good thing is the detail is there for everybody who's got much better eyes than most of us have to drill down.
Well, you're welcome.
Eddie
Thank you.
and Todd, thank you very much.
Mike. Thank you, Todd.
That's Eddie's design.
Well, takes two of you working together, so. All right, thank you very much. Let's move on. Oh, pardon me, I have a motion to accept the Treasury report as presented.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? All right, very good, thank you. Let's move on. And Ted, do you want to address this issue? It sure came up from you, and it was discussed in the executive committee and moved forward with the recommendation, so.
Absolutely. So I had the opportunity to review one of the Airport Authority's standard advertising contracts, and I noticed in the non-discrimination section, which requires any entity that does business with the airport, there is a non-discrimination clause. And I found it curious that both religion and sexual orientation were not required protections. So I raised the issue to Charles, and Charles quite prudently referred it for review to Florio, Perucci, Steinhardt, and Fader. Robert Friedberg did some research with Susan Lawless, and basically analyzed if there were any reasons why the authority should not provide these required protections. And the conclusion was that, first of all, religion was a no-brainer. As a Pennsylvania municipal authority that does business for the public, both federal and state constitutional obligations require the authority not to discriminate. So, on the basis of religious belief, it was a no-brainer. And then, in terms of sexual orientation and gender identity and gender expression, while there is presently no Pennsylvania law specifically providing that or requiring those protections, there's actually a proposed law that seems to have some traction at the moment. And Governor Wolf has signed a couple of executive orders that basically extend those protections, because sex is a protected class in the state of Pennsylvania. And the governor's interpretation and several court interpretations are that sex includes sexual orientation, but the way the world is moving, that those things will be explicitly carved out. And so, also in their research, Mr. Friedberg also discovered that in the Lehigh Valley, all three major cities, Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton, all have already enacted ordinances extending those protections. And so the conclusion was that there's basically no harm in the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority, adding this clause. And, my personal thoughts are that, I've observed a lot of diversity around the Airport Authority and feel that it's actually one of the core strengths of the authority. So this would just be a good business to make sure that it's clear to everyone that the authority will not discriminate in these areas. And, the authority's customers, from Air Products to Amazon, all have strong diversity policies. So I don't think this even really puts, if we do this, even puts LNAA ahead of the curve. I think it puts it on the curve. So with that, I'd like to propose a motion to move forward. And there's two aspects that we can move forward on. There's immediately we could act on adding this standard clause to new contracts. I didn't think it was necessary to go and try to retroactively change contracts. That would be expensive and time-consuming. But certainly new contracts that the authority does moving forward, I believe, should have these additional protections. And then our bylaws that apply to board members and employees, I believe, should be amended as well. That would take a 30-day process minimum to enact. So I propose to, move forward with enacting that today.
Okay. Good, thank you. Any questions of Ted?
I have one question, Ted, because I'm supportive of the changes. I think last time when we were in executive committee meeting, somebody had raised the question of, are there any relationships or unintended consequences associated with approving this? Have we researched that? Is that
We
okay?
haven't gotten an answer on that yet, to my knowledge, in relation to the.
You're nodding, Todd, so you were nodding, I didn't know if you were...
As far as the benefits?
Yeah.
No, we're still checking into that.
Okay, still checking. So anything I guess you would do is...
Well, I would move to table until we have that answer, Mr. Chairman.
all
I
right.
don't think we're really talking about anything that would impact benefits, though, and that certainly was looked at by the law firm. We're not talking about spouses. I mean, marriage and those types of things are very clear, so I'm not
In this
sure
case, we're
what-
talking about future contracts, not about our employees. If we amend the bylaws to include comments with regard to our employees, I think we better have an answer to that question, but I don't think there's an, I don't think
What
would be
is
an
the
issue.
worry, though? That's what what's an example of what could be
I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's why we need a little bit of
I think that's
research in
what we
terms
need
of
research.
health benefits, consequences, if there are any, for employees. Now, in terms of contract services, I think it's irrelevant, right? So I think definitely we're probably, or I know I am in favor of moving forward for contracts, but if it's something that has,
Well, you're saying with the bylaws?
Yeah.
Correct.
yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
To
So
put-
table
to put
the
it-
bylaws, but the
To put it forward as an issue for our contracts, I can't imagine that's an issue, just to say that anybody who would have to comply with that. I can't imagine. Judge?
yeah.
Well, the question that's been raised is one that certainly we'd have to look into, Todd, and we're available to assist in that regard. The proposal here is for a motion that would simply require this language to be used in the future in contracts that the authority enters into.
Correct.
And in that regard, I have proposed language for you.
Yeah, I have it.
Do you have it there? Okay.
You want to read that, Ted?
Sure.
A question for you, I'm sorry. If it's a contract in which the authority is a party, is it not a contract with employees also? Let's just throw that
Well,
out.
when employees work for the authority, it's a contract of employment, so I guess in that sense, any employee has a contract with the authority.
I mean, Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton all have this without any, I don't think think anybody's aware of any negative consequences of having these protections, so, you know, I think the risk is de minimis if it exists and it's the right thing to do.
I hear Todd talking over there, so I'm gonna,
Oh, no, I'm saying, why don't we just wait until we hear back?
when do you think we would have a definitive answer?
Well, we definitely have something by next month's committee meeting, for sure. I mean, next month's executive committee or board meeting, we'll have it, for sure. We just need some time, because we reached out to our insurance company, we just haven't heard back. So that was the main concern that came out before, was the insurance company, was it from the insurance perspective.
I'm not a big one on parliamentary procedure, but parliamentary procedure with a motion to table, we need to take a vote on the motion to table, I believe. Am I
We need a
right?
second on the motion to table, Mr. Chairman, if there is a second.
I guess I have one question. You're talking about health insurance?
Yes.
Okay, so does the airport authority provide health insurance to non-married partners right now?
Does the authority provide, what are you asking me?
Non-married.
Non-married partners.
I have to look and see, I'm not sure off the top of my head. I don't know.
Okay, I doubt it, right? So what would be the difference?
Yeah. In any case,
You're
we have a
married,
motion
you're
to
married.
table, so but we need a second to the motion to table.
I'll second.
All right. So all those in favor of tabling till our next meeting, please say aye. Say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed to tabling?
I'm opposed.
Opposed.
We have two opposed, the majority would be a table, so it is tabled until, actually, better motion would have been to postpone, to be frank, but as long as they're all in agreement that we will have an answer at the next meeting and vote upon it. Ed, do you want to give us a report on the General Aviation Advisory Committee?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The General Aviation Committee has met regularly now on a monthly basis, pretty well attended. And basically, the headline from the last meeting is twofold. Number one, Braden Air Park was addressed, the status update in terms of capital improvements that are being planned for the air park. The good news is that there was general consensus between the county, between staff, between the General Aviation Committee, and a potential new client on, what changes and upgrades need to be made at Braden Air Park. So that has been moving forward very positively. If those changes are made in the near future, we expect that we may have a tenant who will come in and potentially rent space at Braden Air Park and provide services for aircraft repair. So that is very positive, and I think we're now at a point where in the near future, we will have that capital plan agreed, potentially a lease agreed with a potential new tenant, and we'll get to work on revitalizing Braden Air Park. So that's great news, and once that happens, we do think that that'll be the catalyst to attracting even more aircraft and other partners and services to the airport.
Please
So
enter
that's
your
number one.
access code followed by the pound or hash sign.
Number two, the other highlight from the meeting was, at the previous meeting, there was some interest raised by current tenants over at
To
Queen City
enable audio
Airport.
controls, please enter
And,
your audio PIN followed by the
and
pound
the
or hash
general
sign.
aviation community,
If you do not have a PIN,
from the general aviation community about potentially additional hangar space over at Queen City. And this is something that has been just kind of viewed from afar over the course of years because of the obviously challenging financial situation we were in, and also just the perception that maybe this is too big an expense to take on at this point in time. What was nice was, and one of our board members, Ted Rosenberger in particular, did a lot of great research over the course of a month and basically uncovered potential suppliers that can do hangars very, very cost effectively. And with some innovative technology, for example, the doors on the hangars, which are sometimes complex, very expensive, et cetera. He uncovered one that had innovative technology that made it much more cost effective and very user-friendly for potential tenants. So that also led to, in partnership with staff, working on identifying, are there any areas that are kind of greased for, very quick, approvals and, potentially implementation of a new hangar. And it was a good, productive meeting. Staff said, hey, there are some pads here that are already kind of preset, pre-approved for hangars if and when we have the capital, we have the tenants, et cetera. So what's nice is there was a confluence here of, board members, staff, et cetera, potential tenants, excuse me, coming together and realizing that, adding additional hangar space cost effectively in the near future can be feasible. So we're going to continue to explore that. Again, thank you to Ted in particular for doing some great research on this and opening our eyes to, the opportunity for new technology and also cost-effective suppliers. So we'll debrief everybody in a future meeting in terms of how that's progressing. Thank you, staff, for working with the board and with Ted on identifying this opportunity. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them in terms of the General Aviation Committee.
Question on,
Yes, Brian.
so as far as flexibility with being able to handle those more cost-effective ways of construction or whatever, are there restrictions that the staff faces on that? Or are they able to look at those options, look at all those options and take the ones?
Well, I'll take that one. One of the thoughts was that if private individuals would fund it, then things could be done in a more cost-effective way in some cases.
Rather than being
Rather than the
contracted?
authority not being the contractor, the entity that's contracting, it would be private development on airport grounds and hangars. So that was a model that I was investigating.
Our solicitor has a comment.
That question came up in the executive committee, both with regard to having tenants do some of the work and with regard to volunteers from the community doing some of the work. In that regard...
We're talking about a private company, and this is a different issue than that one, I think.
All right, but with regard to the tenants doing it, I have asked our labor council to look into that, because I want to be certain that if we did so, it wouldn't conflict with any of our agreements, labor management agreements.
Yeah.
So that's being researched at this point. I'm also researching the question of use of volunteers with regard to the impact on existing contracts with unions.
Specifically, though, this, what I was looking into at Queen City was the possibility of private investors, building hangars themselves and, long-term land lease from the authority. And certainly, in that situation, some different cost models could be applied to that type of work.
Yeah.
The same type of project was proposed at ABE at one point recently.
And I could see that, happening on a larger scale too. I mean, I can see a major corporation who was interested in building a hangar that they wanted.
Absolutely.
Correct. Yeah, and there's other benefits too, in the sense of, then the capital cost will be borne by the private investor or the organization that's taken on the land lease, let's just say, as opposed to the authority. So there are many benefits to explore. The good news, it's now on the table. People are doing some research. And also, our council is advising us on what we can and can't do. And so I think what's good is, at a minimum, we'll be much more informed in terms of what we can and can't do. And hopefully we'll find that, hey, this is an attractive alternative to what we've been doing from an operational standpoint and a capital investment standpoint. And it seems like there's demand. And if there's demand, we want to fill it. So great work again. Thank you, Ted, for spearheading this. And I think at the next board meeting, we'll have some additional stuff to report.
Thanks, Ed.
I attended that meeting, and I was only encouraged by the conversation at the table. One thing that came up about aesthetically, how could these buildings be, apparently from what Ted brought forward, the buildings would fit the motif that we presently have. Not that they would be custom hangars, but they would be a little more desirable hangars, not only for an individual aircraft, but also for storage space and maybe an office space. I think we were looking at condition hangars as well, which we presently don't have over there. So I was encouraged by the conversation.
Thanks. Thank you. Hey, thank you, Eddie. I want to thank Chuck and Darren as well. Chuck and Darren and I had a meeting with a prospective tenant at Braden as well, and also looking at the improvements, and I was really pleased with what the staff has done to come up with ideas and budgets and so on that I think fills that need. So I think we're really close to moving forward and finalizing that and making sure we get able to use the county money, and I think everybody at this point seems to be signed on that we agree with the projects as listed. So I'm hoping that very soon, Mr. Councilman, we can go visit Northampton County and say we've got a budget and we've got a plan, and thank them very much. And also, as we pledged, give them a semi-annual report as to what's happening at the airport. I would say the same thing, Mike, that we should come visit Lehigh County sometime this summer and before you get into the budget next for 2018. So.
And Mike, sorry, if I may, definitely want to reiterate that. Chuck, thank you to Chuck in particular, and Glenn for moving the ball forward on behalf of the county, on behalf of the committee, and you, Mike, for helping to spearhead that last meeting where I think things really started to gain traction and move forward. So we are making tremendous progress, and thank you.
The good thing is everybody's being flexible, which is the good point. So,
yep,
excellent. Although we've had a lot of meetings, and so, Brian.
Just one comment is that, we saw very favorable financials that were brought up, and it is exciting to see those. At the same time, each of those dollars is valuable, and so I applaud this effort and this research to look into the ways to spend those dollars effectively and get the most return from them.
Absolutely.
And if that means innovation, if that means creativity, and I think that's responsible care of the money.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And I think that's true for all of us. It's the very thing that we need to be doing. And it's kind of a new awareness, I think, on the part of the authority board members and also for the staff for that matter. So we're learning better ways to work together. On to finance and capital planning. And we do have the 2016 financial audit before us. We have our accountants here.
No, they're not here, but I'll
Okay,
walk
invite
through
them in.
this.
Yeah. You didn't want to.
Our 2016 financial audit is up for approval. We went through it in detail at our Business and Finance Committee meeting, and we were trying to get our auditor, who's supposed to be on the call, but he was available at our Finance Committee meeting, and he went in detail. I know Eddie met with him on about an hour-long conversation to go through specifics. But the important things to keep in mind, I know this is a long document, and you probably fall asleep when you read this stuff, is we got an unqualified opinion, which is the best opinion you can get. It means we got a clean audit. The second thing you want to know, there was no management comment. So we didn't have any comments. And as you recall, this is the second year that we had Crow Horwath. That might be Scott on the line. Mm-hmm. Hello, yes. Scott? Is that you?
Yes, this is Scott.
Okay, so...
thanks for joining us.
Thanks for calling in there, Scott. I was just walking through some comments on the audit, but as you recall, this is the second year with Crow Horwath. Previously we had Campbell, and we had them for about 20 years, so we got a fresh set of eyes, and one of the nice things about Crow Horwath is they have airport experience, so they give us some relative differences versus other airports that we might not have gotten from Campbell. Although Campbell did a great job, that's one of the things that we were looking forward to in addition to the fresh set of eyes. And as you recall, some of the people that were on the committee a few years ago, we struggled to get it done in this time frame. We had wanted it done in May, but we were always trying to get them in June, and then they had a short window, and we have it done in May for your approval. And I don't know if you want to chime in on anything in particular, Scott, or if anybody has any particular questions. Scott, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I guess Todd, I just wanted to mention that we did have a chance to talk with the committee a little bit about some of the things that are happening in the airport authority space, just things that are topics that the airport, as well as other airports across the country, are addressing. And I just wanted to point out that, as I mentioned to the committee, that in the 2 years that we've worked with management, they've really taken an ownership attitude of the financial statements and transitioning from being somewhat reliant on financial statement preparation by the auditor, really moved to preparing the financials on their own this year, which I think is a great step forward for building your internal capacity. So I just wanted to thank Karen and Todd for all the efforts they made this year. And I think a lot of that was due to us talking throughout the year about what type of activities are happening at the airport and anticipating whether there are unusual transactions or issues to address and getting those addressed early on in the year.
And I want to chime in on that as well. One of the things that really works to our advantage by us preparing the financial statements, which was a big lift, kind of transitioning with years of Campbell doing them and us being reliant on them to kind of not only audit but also prepare, which was kind of a conflict. But with us doing them, we can also generate those audit-like financials mid-year, which most of the bankers and financial institutions want. They want that kind of information, and we could not present it in an audit-type format unless we did it at the end of the year. So now we can actually do those mid-year or whatever. And one of the reports that we did add in this year's audit, I think it's on page 56, is the supplemental report that we talked about by cost center that Eddie has asked for and a few others. So that's actually one of the supplemental reports that we included in this report. I might have the page number wrong, but that was one of the reports that we did add. Any other comments, thoughts?
Have any questions while Todd is here? I'd like to invite us to have an executive session, absent staff, to see if we can address any questions that the staff might have, that the board might have with the auditors. It's kind of, I think, a common practice. And so could I ask for a motion for executive session?
So moved.
Moved and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Then can we excuse everyone other than the authority members, and we'll have an opportunity to address the auditor. Thank you. I don't suspect this will take long, so don't go too far, but.
Yes, sir.
Trust your legal opinion. Is discussion about the audit acceptable executive session discussion?
Yeah. On what basis would it not?
Well, there's only a handful of things that are.
That's why we go.
Allow me to say that there were no questions directed to the auditor from the members of the authority, and people seem quite satisfied with the results of the audit and the performance. And so, airport capital improvement plans update.
Yeah, I just have two short videos. Everyone likes videos. Just to go through
I like some video.
where we are with some of the capital projects. The first one that we'll be going through is our main terminal switchgear. We've talked about this before. It's been in our capital program. What you see here is the 1948 switchgear that's in the old government building. So it was a little old, a little time to get it replaced. As you see, this is actually in the basement, another section of the government building that's somewhat protected. Whatever we decide to do with the building in the future, this is what it looks like today. Closed off room with the new switchgear currently installed. There's a few closeout items we're still working on, but the main piece of the equipment's in place. We're up and running. And here they're just putting in one of the electrical conduits for the service coming in. There's actually we switched over about three weeks ago. It's actually a pretty extensive exercise with staff and the consultants and the engineer to really coordinate the switch over. We didn't have any issues, no electrical breaks. You can see here, we had to plan pretty accordingly. We had about a 1/4 of an inch clearance to get it in there. Fit like a glove. Slid it into the basement. and then getting it up on the actual concrete pad. That's right. So here it is in place. Again, it's got, a bit more digital controls in the new age. We can actually monitor the status of it via internet. So, with the web browser when you're not even in the room, which is something that our ops personnel and maintenance really wanted to have in place. Again, as I mentioned, it's up and running. We didn't have any issues. A lot of man hours just coordinating to make sure everything went smoothly, which it did. So we're very happy about that. And again, that switchgear powers this building as well as our departure facility. And then we got another one, real quickly, just to go through with multimodal. Should be the same one. Yep, there we go. Thank you. And again, you've probably seen a little different outside with where we are with multimodal. Just kind of run through where we are, where we've been. Building 10 was demolished. It's hard to imagine there was a building there with how it looks like today. This was before we went in and started putting up some of the canopies and some of the other site work. Again, you've seen coming in, the structural steel for the canopies has been put in place. They're still working on that a little bit. Again, with how we've gotten here, a lot of site work and prep with utility relocation, moving some utilities and lines, whether it be storm sewer, those kinds of things. Again, digging the trenches that are needed to be put in. This was actually our sewer line relocation that we did at night. Again, with the airport open 24/7, we didn't want any impacts to our passengers. Putting in the fill for the actual canopies, putting in the footers, making sure everything was level and in place, and addressing any soil issues that we encountered as we went through. Just pouring some of the concrete in there. Those are the actual structural footers that then got backfilled, which is what the canopies get put on. So the crews first placed them, get everything kind of bolted in with a couple bolts, and then tighten everything, and then come back and do the welding in the different sections. I started doing that. Let's see. Yeah, so they come back, they tighten everything, then they do some of the welding. The next step is actually do some of the painting, which we're waiting for some good weather to hopefully cooperate for that, but they're basically going to go around and paint everything as well. So the other thing is the retaining wall kind of on the northeast side is, as you can see here, which used to separate the rental car return from the ready lot. Because of the grade change, it's required a retaining wall. It's a pretty substantial size. But actually on the other side of that is going to be where some of the bus parking positions are, where people are waiting, so it's kind of a wall, another weather protection barrier for that as well. And then again, the other thing you've seen outside is actually framing of the vestibule, so coming out where the rental car counters are, as well as the bag claim. There's kind of it framed out with the roof. I think today they're actually starting on the other siding. And then here we wanted to point out, we actually removed quite a few trees throughout the project, so if you hadn't noticed, it's actually a lot more open when you come to the airport. There's actually a few more trees I think they have to take down, so it'll really help, once this continues on, really accentuate the kind of facelift that we're currently undergoing, as well as hopefully make it easier for people to wayfinding, to see signs and all of that. So just a couple quick updates. If anyone had any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Sure. On time, on budget?
Currently on time. We've encountered a few issues with some soil here and there, which we're still managing, via change orders, which will come back as we rectify everything with adds, deducts, that kind of thing as we go. But we're now still on schedule. We just need the weather to clear up a little bit.
So what's your projected
So
dedication date?
currently we're still at the end of July. Once we get closer, and again with some of these parameters with the weather, we'll be able to narrow down the more official date, but we're still looking for the end of July.
Right, on the canopy that's coming out from the car rental, one of the last ones you just showed there.
Yep.
Is the other one going to butt up against that, or is it going to be a space in there?
There's going to be, it's actually when you come out, there will be a canopy there as well. The only space is going to be where it was before, that kind of maintenance access road. So it's a tiny little, maybe 10, probably 15-foot gap. When you come out of the vestibule, it will be covered as well. So I think once they get that framed in, they'll put those canopies there as well.
Ryan, once construction is completed, is there some kind of ceremony to
Yeah.
launch this great work?
Yep.
That's currently being
Yeah.
planned.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Could you remind us what the airport's present policy towards Uber is and how this facility, if would affect, I mean, it's certainly here to stay, Uber and Lyft, and what is the current policy towards Uber? It's been a while
Current
since
policy
we...
is that Uber is allowed to pick up,
Okay.
and they're also able to drop off. That's our current policy. But our contract is currently being reviewed.
Okay.
So we're waiting for
Could
that
raise
to
the
come.
fees for Uber 2 meetings ago.
Lyft is not a partner at this point. They're not.
Is looking to be?
Yeah, at one point there were, but not currently. We don't know anything. But it's just Uber at this point.
Because I think a lot of the delta that Eddie's talking about with parking revenue not only reflects decreased passenger traffic, but Uber. One thing we neglected, by the way, Brian, thank you.
Yep, sure. Thank you.
One thing we neglected to do was to approve the audit, and so may I have a motion to accept the audit as presented?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Any opposed? Wonderful. Director's report.
Thank you. The biggest news since our last meeting is that the Governor Wolf on Friday signed Senate Bill 133, which is the Pennsylvania Real ID Compliance Act. What that will do, it'll offer Pennsylvania residents a Real ID compliant driver's license or state ID card, which they can use to access airport boarding areas and other federal facilities. So with this action, it seems that the Department of Homeland Security will give the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania additional time to come into compliance with the Real ID Act. In terms of past events, earlier this month, we had the Wings for All, that's formerly the Wings for Autism event on the 6th of May. There were 75 participants, and Allegiant was our airline partner. We are grateful. As you may recall, this event gives people with autism spectrum disorders the opportunity to come to the airport, go through the screening, the checkpoint, and to actually wait in the boarding area and then get on the aircraft. And it's very helpful because they get to do a dry run. There's about 35 other airports across the country who do this. This is our third year of participating in this program. And lastly, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society Man and Woman of the Year grand finale event will be held on the 6th of June. You have been invited. For RSVPs, please get with Sylvette or myself, and we will make sure that we make the arrangement set. If there's any questions I can answer, I'd be happy to do so.
On the Real ID,
Yes.
I was a little confused as to what that, if everybody's Pennsylvania driver's license was Real ID today, what would be different than it is now? I mean, it seems like you could still go through the terminal with your Pennsylvania driver's license
There were
as your form
some
of ID.
minimum security standards, like putting anti-counterfeit technology onto the device, the ID card, conducting background checks on those persons who issue the driver's license. And there's several other measures that the Real ID compliant ID will have that the standard driver's license will not have.
Because it gets
And
a
it's-
But you have
seal.
to opt in to get one, right?
Yes,
You
there
will
will-
have to.
There will
So-
be two different driver's licenses that will be offered. One will be compliant and one will not be.
So if you show up in the future, when this is fully implemented, if you show up at ABE to take a flight and you have a non-Real ID license, what does that mean?
It will mean that you will need a passport to board the aircraft.
Really? Okay.
Yes,
And otherwise, you will not get on.
That's not the case now.
that is correct.
Okay.
And we've
So
extended
this is
time.
kind of,
Yes.
right. So anybody that has any hint of possibly wanting to do air travel in the future is going to want to get one of these. correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
I just think this idea of opting in or opting out is going to be a nightmare
Yeah, they should
at some point. It
do
just doesn't make any sense to me. It seems to me, I can see somebody thinking, oh, the Pennsylvania licenses are good and going up with it and not getting
Yeah,
on.
can you imagine being turned away from a flight because you didn't
Of
know
course,
about it?
issuance is not going to be
Yeah.
instantaneous, so if all of a sudden I decide, Aunt Bertha died, and I've got to get there, got to get to Atlanta, I
Right.
don't have a compliant driver's license,
It's
I've
crazy.
got a problem.
Charles, how long was the extension?
It'll go until 2020, so that's when the ultimate compliance date is.
2020, okay, so we have a return.
We have a little bit of time, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Charles, any further update on the state budget process as
No.
regards, I think it was Act 52?
Act 52 is the
Okay.
issue, and we have not gotten additional information as to whether that has been placed in. I suspect that later on this summer, we'll get a better feel.
Okay.
Any questions? Then the solicitor's report.
The brief in the WBF litigation has been filed with the Commonwealth Court. We are waiting now for the Commonwealth Court to schedule an argument, which will be an argument held before 3 judges of the Commonwealth Court. I would expect that it'll be in the next 3 to 4 months, but I don't know that until I hear from the Commonwealth Court. The litigation that's ongoing with regard to the eminent domain fee before Judge Verricchio has been listed for final hearing on July 3rd. So that's the scheduling for that. Darren will be testifying at that hearing, and there's testimony from one witness for the other side, and that should conclude that matter, other than the judge listing the matter for briefing and argument, I expect. So.
Shakespeare said the wheels of justice grind slowly but exceedingly small. So, any questions of the solicitor? Any new business? Remind you, Charlie, do you want to talk about the advertising program? And
Yes, after this meeting, there will be a tour for members of the Board of Governors to tour the airport to see the advertising program.
so we encourage you to join us. If there's no other business, I'll encourage a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Very good. Thank you very much. See you in June.
Yeah.
I don't know, we know where you live at. You're lucky, we didn't send someone else to get you. Yeah, I know you did. Don't worry, we got an enforcer.
You know, when they say your balance is...
That's okay. I just laughed when I saw you, I just started laughing.